It's always like an honor and a privilege to do a presentation for the APS. And I look forward to spending this time with you and sharing this offbeat Hanukkah collection of material and sharing a few anecdotes as well. If you do have a few markers, a blank envelope, pen, colored pencils, I invite you to join me at the end of this presentation for a little interactive Hanukkah philatelic action. So I thought that it would be prudent to give people a tiny bit of historical context when it comes to all of this stuff. The story of Hanukkah really comes down to us through the books of Maccabees, and this is a very interesting historical bit. There's First Maccabees, Second Maccabees. There's a book called The War of the Jews by Flavius Josephus, and most of what we know about the Hanukkah story comes from these sources, primarily the first book of Maccabees. And by and large, and this is another one that I'll talk to you in a minute about, but by and large, what happens is the emperor Antiochus decides that he wants to Hellenize Judea, and there were a group of people that decided that they did not want to do that, and that they would fight for their independence and to preserve their culture and worship their God. And although this Matisyahu isn't the guy that led the Hasmonean revolt, this Matisyahu did. In Hebrew, it's Matityahu. In English, it's Matthias, and in Yiddish, it's Matisyahu. So this is an illustration by Gustave Doré, and he led this revolt in the town of Modi'in. This is Modi'in today in present-day Israel, and they have you can go and visit the graves of the Hasmoneans there. When Matityahu died, his son Judah and the Maccabees continued the battle to liberate Judea. The little colored dots that I have here, for those of you that have visited Israel or are familiar with the geography, those are the colored dots are points that you may have visited. Certainly the purple one is Jerusalem, and you see how close everything is. Just so that you get an idea, from Jerusalem to Jericho is about a 25-minute drive. So in 164 BCE, the Jerusalem was liberated, and the Maccabees found only a single jar of oil, and it should have lasted for one night, and instead it lasted for 8 days, enough to manufacture more oil. So Jewish people celebrate Hanukkah by lighting a menorah for 8 days, and the menorah thing is a big deal. This is in Washington, this is in Paris, this is in Berlin, and this is Zach Hyman of the Edmonton Oilers lighting the Hanukkah menorah in Edmonton. So Jewish people get together and celebrate, and we also consume food, potato latkes, potato pancakes, sufganiot, or jelly donuts that are sort of made with oil, and the dreidel and the candles are part of so these are the things that make up the motifs that you see on Hanukkah material. Everything sound kosher so far? Now, the thing to consider that most people don't understand is that Hanukkah was not a big deal for Jewish people until I would say the 1920s, 1930s, and it's a bigger deal today. The reason is the story is not in the Jewish Bible. It is in the Catholic Bible, but it is not in the Protestant Bible. And Adam Sandler's 8 Crazy Nights just didn't exist in my grandparents' time in Canada. Hanukkah was observed. Menorahs were lit, dreidels were spun, and if kids got lucky, like when I was a kid, my father would give me a silver dollar. But that was it. No 8 nights. One night you would get that. We'd light the candles. We'd sing our songs. So the holiday is not in the same context as the high holidays or Passover or Shavuot or Sukkot. But it has, what has happened is that it has come to that point because Christmas and Hanukkah are so closely tied in terms of timing. So when you follow this through, postcards, which were invented 1869, 1870 by this gentleman, Dr. Edmund Herman, there's a stamp to him, and you see some of the initial postcards. And what's incredible about postcards is where there were no postcards one year, in 1870, there were 75 million posted. So postcards were really, really popular. And of course, people took them on to make Christmas cards. But for Jews, they would not have made Hanukkah cards. These things are called Shana Tovas. In Hebrew, Shana Tova means a good year. So among the first postcards exchanged by Jewish people weren't Hanukkah cards. There were these things called Shana Tovas. And you see there's a little verse, for those of you that read Yiddish, the Gute Mama bench Dilech, the mother is blessing the lights. And there's other postcards that are like this. They are all sort of made by the same bunch of people. And you can see I transliterated the Yiddish and English. So if anybody has some German, they can read it and figure it out. But they took themes that were religious ones, and then they took themes that were embracing modernity as well. So the first postcards that we see, the first postcards that we really see about Hanukkah are interesting things, because they're you have to understand that Western European Jewish people, for the most part, were assimilated. And there were painters and artists that took it upon themselves to paint the holiday so that people would remember the traditions or remember what was. So Oppenheim is one of the most famous of all Jewish painters, and we will see this painting again. This is a painting that was reproduced on a postcard circa 1899. Here's another one from Germany. This one's pretty good, very, very good rendering, and it's an honest rendering. The guys made a really good attempt to capture the service, and you see he's got his children, but you also see these. And now here is a 1903 postcard, and the artist is giving it his best, but you can see, those of you who do read Hebrew can see that Hanukkah isn't spelled properly, and the kid is lighting the candles the wrong way. It just goes to show you that at this point in time, there was a fair deal of assimilation, and people made these kinds of mistakes when they were rendering these subjects. And here's another one. This is a Shana Tova. Again, those people that read Hebrew can see the affiliation there. But why is a Hanukkah story doing on a Jewish New Year's card? And those of you, again, I keep coming back to this, that the Hebrew text clearly says that it's Hanukkah, but there's a New Year's bench underneath it. And it was probably printed by people who didn't understand, and they were looking for a traditional Jewish family scene to use for a New Year's card, and they didn't put the two and two together. And this one also shows the fellow lighting the candles the wrong way. I thought this postcard would be interesting to show everybody, because sometimes postcards were issued by synagogues to sort of brag about the things that they have in their house. So this is the synagogue in Sétif, Algeria, and they have this magnificent Hanukkah, and it's sitting right in the front. Hanukkah and the war. We do see the servicemen getting these postcards to send to family and friends from the Jewish Welfare Board. And this one is courtesy of the National Museum of Jewish History. Here is a postcard issued in Germany, and it has a bunch of Jewish orphans, people that are looking, obviously, to find a place to flee the violence that is coming, and it's very well articulated, and it's a fundraising postcard sent by the orphanage in Frankfurt, dated 1937, just before all hell broke loose in Europe. And this is from the Yad Vashem archives. My good friend Greg Phillipson has a phenomenal collection of some of these things, and he was kind enough to share these with me. Again, this is a 1940 version, and this particular one I thought was really interesting. It's a 1942 postcard, and my curiosity was sort of piqued by the verse that was written underneath the Chanukiah. It says Rosh Yamini Niseti v'Oyev Shmo Machita, and it is from the Psalm Rock of Ages. Jewish people sing when they light the Hanukkah menorah. There's a song called Ma'oz Tzur, and most of the time people sing the first verse. I sing the first one and the last one with my kids, so they all laugh and they all sing the last one now too. But if you read the entire psalm, the verses break down into the enemies of Israel. And I was, when I was going through this, I was trying to figure out what was the significance of this, and what was the significance of the Benjaminite you lifted. And this is the story, actually recalling the story of Purim. And for Jewish people, the story of Purim and the evil guy Haman is sometimes affiliated with Hitler, and the fact that all the Haman's son, he was killed, the sons were killed, and so it has a connection to all of this. Another Hanukkah postcard from the Jewish Welfare Board, from Michelle and Greg's archives. So as I said to you before, until recent times, Hanukkah was thought of as a minor festival in the Jewish calendar. Its proximity to Christmas is really added to its popularity. So we see Israel, created in 1948, and the first Hanukkah stamps and postmarks were issued by the state of Israel. So this one in 1949 is a cover, an envelope, and it's a postmark, and it's related to the youth corps in Israel, the Gadna. And you see on the left of the cachet, it says Hanukkah Chi. The Chi means 1949 in the Hebrew calendar. And it had to do with a race that was called Meirutz HaOrim, the Marathon of Light. And it was issued by, again, the Israeli Army Youth Corps. The stops in the marathon are there, but they sort of metaphorically connected to Hanukkah because of the light and certainly the time of the year that this race is held. The banks got into some stuff too, because there was a whole tradition in the Jewish faith of giving Hanukkah geld, certainly amongst the Ashkenazic Jews, to give a little bit of money to their children, called Hanukkah geld. The German word for money is Geld, so that should connect with some people. So here is a cover and a postmark. I did the best I could to sort of capture the postmark so you could see it. And this is the postmark is pretty much saying use Hanukkah geld and subscribe to receive Israeli postage stamps. The new Israeli postage stamps are being released. And here's another cover issued at the same time. These are all affiliated with the Israeli Post Office. You can see an embossed mark on the bottom left corner, and you see the oil lamp there, and the Hebrew verse going around it says "V'tzapachat Hashem en lo techsar," and it means that we will never run out of oil. And according to my good friend Rabbi Tradbergs, this is the verse that most people connect with Hanukkah from the Jewish Bible. Naomi Shemer had a song published and released in 1986, a really lovely song. So if any of you want to search for it, you can, that uses this as a chorus. And again, in 1954, the banks are using an envelope, and there's a beautiful ligature between the final noon and the dreidel, where you see the dreidel sort of doing a little pirouette around the bottom of the last letter. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Hebrew text, the last letter in some of the words translates to another form. So what the artist has done is he's used it to his advantage to make a beautiful postmark with the dreidel. Again, metaphorically, people used Hanukkah as a time to celebrate certain events. There's another torch relay race that was held every year, not necessarily connected to the Hanukkah holiday, and you'll see this again, but the Hanukkah time, and relating the whole idea of torches and light. This one was a cover that was issued in 1972 after the terrible attacks in Munich, and it has to do with a torch relay as well that actually started from Kfar Maccabi near Ramat Gan, in memory of the Israeli athletes who perished. These stamps were issued in 1961. They're not Hanukkah stamps per se. They're called Moadim L'Simcha. They're advertising holidays, but here they're showing the heroes of Israel, and this particular one is Judah Maccabee, in Hebrew Yehudah HaMaccabee. And I highlight Asher Calderon. Asher Calderon was a fantastic graphic designer. He did all kinds of great stuff for the Israeli Post Office. And what they did is they repurposed it in 1989 because the Israeli Post Office created something called Israel Stamp Week. And they timed it for around the Hanukkah break, that period of time every year. So there's a whole series of these cards. So here is this one, and this is the first. These are actually the first Israeli Hanukkah stamps. So 1972, and I think the first Christmas stamps in the United States were 1961. And here you go, 1972. You see the first Israeli Hanukkah stamps. One would have thought that they might have issued them sooner, because I know that the founding fathers of the state of Israel certainly closely identified them with the Maccabees for the fight for freedom. But as I told you before, because the holiday itself isn't really dovetailed to Jewish religious observance the same way, I guess they felt 1972 was okay to put these out there. They're all made from Hanukkah Chanukias or Hanukkah menorahs from different parts of the world. And this one was reproduced on an international show card issued in Essen, Germany in 1986. The Israeli post office would go and have a booth and sell their stamps. And you see the line drawing of the shul in Essen. There's a postcard of what it looks like, and a contemporary postmark with the shul of Essen. It's still a tourist place in the city today. We talked about Oppenheim a little bit before when I showed you some of the postcards. He was the first Jewish artist to receive academic training, very, very successful, and he painted a whole myriad of biblical scenes. And his genre scenes celebrating all the holidays are in collections all over the world. So here's the postcard that we saw, and here's what the actual painting looks like. And this painting was painted in 1880. It's now in the collection of the Israel Museum. And this is the best reproduction I've been able to get of it. And you can see that it's quite a beautiful painting. And he makes an effort to show with the foreground, you have the lighting of the candles, the middle ground, people sort of still attending. And in the background, the older people are doing their thing. So they're showing sort of how the holiday has evolved and how people keep the holiday fresh. You see the kids playing with the dreidel on the floor. And this Israeli post office put this stamp out in 1975, but it was not a Hanukkah stamp. It was issued as part of a series of stamps that are using paintings from the Israel Museum. And you can see that the reproduction really fails quite badly when you compare it to the original. Again, repurposed in 1991 for Israel Stamp Week. And you see the stamp and reproduction, and there's quite a few of these that people can collect. There was an ambitious set of Hanukkah stamps in an 7-year period from 93 to 99, and you can see, I've tried to illustrate them so you can see them clearly, from oil lamps to more contemporary ones as the series goes longer. And the designer has, if you see the 1, 2, 3, you see that the lights on the top of the graphic represent the number of the stamp in the series. And they have all different types. And of course, it's the Israel Museum's job to collect these things and collate them. So they're bringing them to the public eye. The beautiful dreidel is actually designed at the Bezalel Art School. And speaking of the Bezalel Art School, the last one in the series was designed by the head of the Bezalel Art Academy, and it represents Matityahu, the high priest, who played a central part in the story. This fellow's name is Boris Schatz, and really the Israeli Art School still today owes a lot to this guy in terms of getting things going, bringing his expertise from Europe and starting Israel on a really good path for art education. This stamp in 1998 is issued around the Hanukkah time, but again, it's not a Hanukkah stamp, but the cartoon character Srulik is lighting the menorah in the cachet. There is a holiday of holidays celebration in Haifa, not necessarily Hanukkah alone, but certainly an appreciation of all the holidays, Hanukkah, Christmas, and the Muslim holidays. And although the Muslim holidays don't always, they float on the calendar, they don't always occur in December, they make an effort to put something together, and thousands of people come to see this. And I've heard from people that have gone to it that it's very, very impressive to see. So it's a menorah-like stamp. So I thought I'd show that to you. These were a months of the year series. They come in a gum activated sheet. This was issued in February 2002. And what I did is I highlighted the Hanukkah stamp there, and each stamp represents a month and the holiday of that month. And they also come in booklet format, and these are peel and stick. And there's the peel and stick version there, the month of Kislev, and I blew them up so that you can see them. The Israeli stamps, the tab on the bottom of Israeli stamps is a signature of Israeli, like stamp collectors love to have the stamp complete with the tab. That's usually on the bottom row of a sheet, and it usually has either a graphic and sometimes an explanation as well. These things are slightly different in size, and the perforations are there not because they need them, but they sort of make them look more like stamps when you peel them off. The first American Israeli Hanukkah stamp was designed by Chana Smotrich in 1996, and it was an adhesive stamp, and it was Israel's first adhesive stamp. And this is what it looks like. This is a terrific design. The adage "less is more" often works in graphic design. The type is really done well. You can see it says "Nes Gadol Haya Po," a great miracle happened here. And the dreidels that you would use in North America would have Nes Gadol Haya Sham, would have the letter Sheen at the end. It would mean a great miracle happened there. But you see the artist's name at the bottom, and this is a comparison between the American and the Israeli stamp. I will come back to this when I go through the American Hanukkah stamps. You see the artist's name there, not on the US stamp. And Fleetwood issued a whole series because this was a big deal. This was the United States' first Hanukkah stamp, so people went to town, and there was a lot of merch. People produced all kinds of great collectibles that you could get. So these envelopes are postmarked on every day of Hanukkah, and the illustrations are cool. They're not bad. And of course, they put out these souvenir sheets that we've seen before. But if you take a look at the postmarks, you can see how there are two very, very, very different postmarks. The Washington postmark is the linear standard first day of issue postmark, whereas the Israeli one is far more illustrative. Israel put out joint issues with India because Diwali is also the Festival of Lights. There's a first day cover for that. They also, this one in 2015 was issued to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Israel Museum. And you can see that they've used a Chanukiah on this, and they've selectively cropped it. It's a beautiful postage stamp. And the Israel Post Office also, every once in a while, puts out these things. Now, to be honest with all of you, I don't know. I have a few of these things. I don't know quite what to do with them. They're large, uncut press sheets. And graphically, they look really, really cool. But what you do with them after you have them is another story. A lot of artists and a lot of people buy them and they frame them and they put them in their homes. Collectors tend to cut them up and put them in their album. So I cropped out this piece just to show you how beautiful it is and how some collectors would take that and just crop the piece like this out that would be unique to that uncut press sheet and not in the regular booklet format that the stamp would come in, and have that in their albums instead. Another is the 2014 Hanukkah stamp. This one is a sort of a children's motif and a very, very beautiful first day cover with a beautiful postmark. Tamar Fishman, again, when you look at the folk arts, the Jewish folk arts, paper cutting is an ancient Jewish folk art, and Tamar Fishman was commissioned by, I'm not sure whether the Israeli Post Office or the American Post Office were the original commissioners for it, but this was a joint issue. And she did this. You can see the process being undertaken. It is a very, very slow, meticulous process where you have to take a knife and cut these things out. And you see the Israeli stamp, again with the tab. You see with the tab underneath it. And the souvenir leaf with the American and the Israeli stamp. And you see already now the US is starting to get the idea that it might not be a bad thing to make first day cover postmarks that are a little bit more illustrative.
Tamar Fishman is a member of our synagogue in
That's
Maryland.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, she's really, really good. She's did a beautiful, beautiful job on these stamps. So the Israeli ones are gum activated. I wanted to call to your attention these things. Now, personalized stamps are not things that are common in the US. There were agencies in the US that did have licenses to make postage, but they were not affiliated with the USPS. But Habul Shali, which technically means my stamp, it is a program that Israel has, and they often put out like things that attract kids with them as well, like songs and coloring books. But this is a first day cover. And so you have to put this, I have to sort of frame this all for you so that you get how it works. The heart is the stamp. The drawings to the left of the heart are labels. You can buy the sheets with just the hearts on them and supply the artwork for the labels. And when the Israeli post office is involved with it, they can also supply the background. So in other words, if you and I were doing this, we would have a choice between 5 or 6 generic things that they have as sheets, and we could make our artwork and put it in, but we wouldn't really be able to do the background the same way. But the Israeli post office, every Hanukkah, puts these things out. They don't put out that many of them. There's a limited market for them, but here is a bunch, and what I've done is I've enlarged some of them so that you can see them. And again, when you use them, you have to use both. You can't use just the heart, and you can't just use the dreidel. You have to use the thing Sitanon to use them legally for postage. So there's a whole series of these things. They put them out every year, and you see that the design to the right is always constant, but everything else changes. Personalized postage is an interesting animal, and certainly when we come into the Canadian postage stuff, you'll see that it has a huge impact. I have some labels. I think there probably are more, but the Jewish National Fund did issue some labels for Hanukkah, and I wanted to call a few of them to your attention here. I wasn't 100% sure that the reference to this said it was a label. I'm not sure that it was. But again, interesting stuff. Now, the American postage stamps for Hanukkah, again, the first greeting stamps are Shana Tovas. The cards were Shana Tovas. And the United States inherited these things from Europe, but you see that on the top right corner of this one, it's in English as well. So you know that this was printed in Williamsburg in the United States. And you can see that as we got a little bit more used to things in the United States, our Shana Tovas became a little bit more westernized. So here's the first US Christmas stamp issued in '62, and the first Hanukkah stamp issued in 1996. And this first day cover really shows you the difference between the postmarks. So here I have to come to this joke that I saw on the internet. A woman goes to the post office to buy stamps for her Hanukkah card. She says to the clerk, "May I have 50 Hanukkah stamps?" The clerk says, "What denomination?" The woman says, "Oy vey, has it come to this? Give me 6 Orthodox, 12 Conservative, and 32 Reforms." So that's our comic break for the presentation. As I was telling you before, the first Hanukkah stamps meant that the United States Post Office did issue a lot of merchandise. And again, I'm grateful to Greg for sharing some of this stuff with me. And Greg has a pile more in his collection. But here are just some of the things that were out there. But what was really interesting was people were so excited about the first Hanukkah stamp ever being printed in the States, is that they subscribed to these. In the United States, there's a station postmark service, and the USPS is really good about doing this. If you fill out the right papers and do the right forms and give them the right time, they make this opportunity available to service groups and churches and synagogues and mosques. And so people got on the bandwagon and they made Hanukkah postmarks. And these were all in the circa 1996. This one is actually before the stamp was issued. And you can see when you look at them, they're all well-meaning efforts. You know, they're not things that were commissioned by professional graphic designers and illustrators, but they still do the job. And they're a really nice touch. They were used in shopping malls and Jewish community centers and museums. And this is all coming from the excitement generated by the first American Hanukkah stamp. So here we see that it was reissued a few times. And in 2004, we have a new Hanukkah stamp. The next one is the second one. And I brought this, I put the first day cover up as large as I did, because I wanted to call into your attention the beautiful, beautiful illustrations that Artcraft used to put together for these things. And they were a combination of offset lithography and lithographic printing. For those of you who don't know what thermographic printing is, I'm sorry. If any of you have got wedding invitations and you feel the ink, it feels like it's raised, that's thermographic printing. And the combination of the offset and the thermographic printing made really attractive covers. And here, this is the one. You see that in 2004, we're still with a linear postmark. Rabbi Leonard and Dr. Linda Tall had this dreidel in their collection, and the United States Post Office were able to see this, and it was published in a book. This one here, if you want to buy a really, really good book on the art of Hanukkah by Nancy Berman, it's a fabulous, fabulous book to have in your collections. And the rabbi was telling me that initially when they put it together, you see the dreidel and you see the letter form there. I've articulated the letter form in white. So that's the business about P meaning po in Hebrew meaning here. So because they bought this dreidel on Ben Yehuda Street in Jerusalem, the dreidel said Nes Gadol Haya Po, a great miracle happened here. But when they used this image on the postage stamp in the United States, the P, the Po, would not be appropriate. So the rabbi quite correctly alerted the post office that, you're going to have to turn the dreidel so that we have one of the other letters showing. So I wanted to show you this because that's a story that really you wouldn't know about these things. And I know the rabbis also told me that he's been consulted just to be on the safe side for some of the other features on the stamps that the United States Post Office put out since. And again, when that stamp came out, we see another generation of these station postmarks. And I love the one on the top because the Santa Claus is just perfect with it. We don't see station postmarks as much anymore for a variety of reasons. Really what's happened is that people are buying less stamps, and that's just the reality of things. The dreidel postmark, the dreidel stamp was reissued a number of different times, and again, every 2 years, it seems, the United States Post Office is putting out a new Hanukkah stamp. This one by Lisa Reagan. This one by Suzanne Kleinwax. If you look really closely, the yellow K is a dreidel. This works really, really well. And they introduced color postmarks on the first day covers for the first time in 2011. So you still see the standard black and white one, the linear one, but now you have a color one. And credit to the USPS, these things are not expensive to get. You can order these things. They don't put cachets on them like Artcraft does, but you can certainly order blank envelopes like this. And if you really want to, you can put your cachet on afterwards. The Artcraft cachet for this is, once again, just a beautiful thing. Stephen Bronstein's menorah for the beautifully cropped for this image. For the 2013 American Hanukkah stamp. The U.S. started putting out these uncut press sheet things too. There's a number of these, and what a lot of collectors have done is they either buy them on eBay cut up, or they buy them and they use some of them for postage, and they isolate a piece of it that would be unique, a format like this gutter pear, and they would put that in their albums. And here's the first day cover, again with the option of the color cachet. The 2016 William Lowe menorah with the frosted background. A revisiting of Tamar Fishman's. And what I did here is I showed you the American one and the Israeli one. The Israeli stamps, I told you, the collectors like to have the tabs on them. Those are what are preferred. And when you buy Lighthouse albums for Israel, they give you the option to buy them with or without tabs. But there was a very subtle tab on this 2018 issue. I think I have one to show you. The first day cover, you see and as I explained before, you see the Americans start using a more illustrative postmark with the 2018 Hanukkah stamp. So here are the two sheets side by side, and you see that if you want to get that one tab stamp in the middle, you would have to buy a whole sheet and sort of peel it all off. The Israelis are still making gum activated sheets. I think most of the stamps now in North America are moving almost 90% to the gum activated versions. This lovely illustration by Jing Song in 2020. They really look good in sheets as well. Color in the black and white first day cover. Greg Phillipson sent this to me, and this is a wonderful postmark of the Santa and the reindeer flying across the Hanukkah stamp, saying Happy Holidays on it. That's a really nice addition to my collection. And this year's wonderful stamp by Jeanette Kuvan-Oren. And here she is with a tapestry that she was asked to create by the United States Post Office after after the art director saw her work online. And this is the stamp. And once again, you see some illustrative, interesting issues in terms of postmarks and lettering. The final noon is not what belongs on the dreidel. You see that they've used the wrong form of the noon, and that was caught in time, and it was fixed. I don't think they fixed it real well because it still doesn't look like a noon, but that's the postmark that is now being used. And I encourage everybody, if you want to do a quick screen capture of this, I really believe in supporting artists. I'm a graphics guy myself, and this is just a beautiful first day cover. What the artist did is she had a bunch of the envelopes printed in black and white, and she's hand tipped them in watercolor by hand herself, and she signs the envelopes. And for a very modest amount of money, you can have an original piece for your albums. And I encourage everybody to do it. That's really a beautiful thing. I also wanted to tip my hat to Ethel Kessler. Ethel Kessler is the art director in the United States and for the Post Office, and she's been the person behind a lot of the really great American Hanukkah stamps, and I really hope that she continues to guide the creative process.